Hello, 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 and welcome. Welcome to today's installment of Creator for More the podcast. Super excited to have you here with me, and all the more excited because I have a guest. I have the guest for you, and we are going to have an epic conversation. So, my guest today is Amaka Chika, yes, Amaka Chika-Mbonu, and she's a motivational speaker, a certified counselor with a special interest in couples counseling, and she's a certified cognitive behavioural therapist and the founder of Amaka's Book Club, and she's the author of 5 amazing relationship books. And check this out, I'll give you a sneak peek into some of the titles. It will blow your mind away. How to get your wife to swing from the chandelier in a red negligee. How is that for a book title? I love it. And another one is 49 ways to get rid of the other woman without getting caught. I love it. And look at this one. This one is before, when, and after. Where did you put your organ? I love it. Honestly, it is so refreshing to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Lovely to be here. It's amazing to be here. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I was just to give a bit of context into the conversation, because my people are going to be like, relationship, where does this Created for More? I thought we're all just doing motivation. Calm down. This is part of you being more, because we are a full package, right? Our relationships are, particularly relationship with significant others, but that's not the only relationship that matters. Relationship in all aspects of the people we interact on a daily basis. It is part of what makes us the constitution of us. So one of the things that I do on this podcast, or the mandate of this podcast, is really to help us birth everything, to live optimally, to elevate who we are on the inside, such that every part of us, every facet, every expression that encounters another person is at the highest that it can possibly be. So today on the podcast, we are going to be looking through the lens of relationships, marriage, and I thought there was nobody else. Literally, there was nobody else I could have this conversation with about you. So thank you so much for being here. Like I said before, it is lovely to have you on.
It's an honor to be here. It is really an honor to be here.
Fantastic. So I always like to get my guests to introduce themselves. So obviously I've read the script there, but it's a script, right? We want a bit more, of your authentic self. Who are you? What is the essence of Amaka Chika-Mbonu?
Okay, well, it's just me. What you see is honestly what you get. Amaka Chika-Mbonu. I'm a certified counselor, like the script says. I just enjoy speaking with people and listening to people and hearing their stories, because everybody has a story. And a lot of times, all people need to do is speak. You might not even have a solution to their problems. I've just always found that I'm somebody that people can speak to. And I love listening to people's stories. I see myself as a safe space. I love to have a situation where people feel comfortable with me, with telling their, kind of innermost thoughts, things they might not feel comfortable telling anybody. So that's who I am. I'm a certified counselor. I was interested in cognitive behavioural therapy because it actually dealt with the mind, the kind of thoughts one think, how those thoughts produce certain emotions. Those emotions will produce certain feelings. Those feelings will determine actions, and those actions eventually will determine one's outcomes. So that's it. And then writing, I've written from when I was little. Everything I'm doing now is just kind of who I am. I say I'm shy, but these days I'm not saying I'm shy anymore. I'm saying, I really mean it. I'm a very shy person. I'm serious.
I couldn't put shy and you in the same sentence.
I kid you not. That's what people always say. So I've taken to say maybe I'm reserved. I pick my people I keep my
Conserved. You're
people.
conservative
Yes,
at heart.
I'm kind of conservative, yes, even though it may not look like it with all the hair and the makeup. So really, that's who I am: a wife, a mother. I take my parenting very seriously. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, and I'm really a homebody. I rarely go out. I'm really one of those people. In fact, I don't have many friends, but one of the really good friends I have says it's as if they took Everstick and stuck me to a chair in my house. Because I hardly go anywhere. So what else? What will you say about me? I'm not a very adventurous person. Kind of, because I don't really like traveling. The only place I really like, which is like a second home, is London. I'm not one of those people who jets off to the Maldives or goes somewhere. I'm very conservative in a lot of the things I do. And I'm not adventurous that way. I'm a creature of habit. So I don't really like traveling. What else do I like? I love makeup, obviously. I love hair, obviously.
Yes.
And that's it. I don't know. What else do you want to know? I'm just who I am.
Just chill down. I love it. So I want to, before we even, my mind is going on 2 tracks now. The first track is, you say you're conservative, but your book titles are like, whoa.
I know, way out there, right?
Absolutely way out there. So I mean, what is that some sort of paradox? Like, how do you, is there an element of you that is a bit of and what's the word? Like an oxymoron, like you're one thing, but there's a part of you that is just out there in a different way.
You see, if I'm comfortable in my where I am, I guess I can be quite out there, to be honest. I guess it depends on where I am, because when I'm with the people who are my people, I can be a little bit different, I guess. It's when I'm with people I don't really know, I'm not so comfortable with, that I'm a little bit more subdued. So with the titles of my book, I mean, I've written them, I've put them out there, and it's like people I don't even know are going to be reading it. So maybe that's why I didn't feel so funny about it. And it kind of happened by chance, because in my home church, I take the premarital classes for couples. And I always used to tell them, if you want your wife to behave in a certain way, if you want your wife to be swinging from the chandelier in a red negligee, you better not do this, or you better do this. That's what I always used to tell the men. So when I wanted to write the book, that's the title that came to me. And the funny thing is, I've now had to try and surpass that title each time, because I remember a friend of mine telling me, with this title, and you say you're writing another book, how are you going to top this title? But people say I topped it with 49. People say I topped it with 49 ways. So I guess, yes, there is a part of me. It just depends on who I'm with. I can be quite, I guess, fun when I'm with people I'm really comfortable with. I guess that's what I say. Yeah.
I absolutely love it. It tells me, though, just even reading this, it tells me that you're a creative. I can see there's a part of you that just is just not an inside the box thinker. You think outside.
I would agree with that for sure.
Yes. So what I want to do is dial back. I want to dial back to you as your childhood. Like, have you always been like, how were you raised? How does someone get to be like you? How what there must have been something your parents did that just kind of fostered an environment that made it okay to just be yourself in this way.
Oh, well, what will I say? I have always been an out of the box thinker kind of person. I've always gone against the grain, because I remember growing up, I'm Igbo, and my mom would say, "Namaki chori fenelu." That's, you want to fly in the sky. That's what she always used to say. Because I've always been very different. My opinions and I've always been against the grain. Is that how it's put? I've always been a little bit different. So, and I've never been afraid to voice my opinion, no matter how contrary it was to anybody else's. And this got me in a lot of trouble when I was young. It really did. It got me a lot of trouble with my dad, especially, because I was always very vocal and I never accepted the status quo. That's just the way I have always been from when I was young. As far as I can remember, I grew up in England until I was about 10. And then our parents brought us back, which I'm so grateful to them for. They've passed now. But I like the fact that they brought. So I wasn't happy about it at the time. But I see with hindsight, I'm really happy they did. But I know, yeah, I really am happy they did. But I've always gone against the grain, in every way. And I've never been afraid to stand up for what I felt was right. Even if everybody else thought it was wrong, I'm the kind of person that would stand up against anything anybody else was saying and say. So like I just said, it got me in a lot of trouble when I was little. It got me in a lot of trouble. I'll say that. And, right now I'm like much older now, but in those years, from a lot far back as I can remember, and even way into my teens, God, I always had a lot of problems with my parents, my dad especially, and my uncles even about this. Even till now, a lot of my ideas, because sometimes people say this is the norm or this is what has always been done. But I've always felt, especially in the area that I've chosen to play in marriage, a lot of ideas are just plain wrong. And people think it's right. Or just because, not that they even think it's right, just because it's gone on for so long, they just
it's
go
gone
with
on for
it.
so long. Yeah. I love it. That's so true. And so how did you even get into this space? Like, did you think you were going to be, did you feel that you were going to go into the marriage and relationship? Was there an inclination from when you were young? Did you have an interest in it? How did you get into the marriage and relationship
I
space?
never thought I'd be in this space. I really mean it. It just happened kind of by chance. So I've been married for 29 years. And anyone who's been married for any length of time will know that there have been, I always say this, I mean, anyone who's heard me speak has heard me say this, that there have been loads of highs, but there have also been some lows. And at some point, it's a topic for another day, but at some point in the course of the 29 years of my marriage, I had a challenge that was major. It was major for me, and it kind of put me in this space from the point of view that, a combination of things. One, that was one thing. I think that was the catalyst, because I've always been very cloaked, really. Yes, I can be quite out there when I'm with people I know, but I've always been kind of undercover. I was a wife and mother for many years. My husband, I've known him for 2 years. We got married for 29 years. And just in the course of marriage, there was a challenge. And it was a combination of things. That challenge, plus the fact that I was in a group of women in my local church that was very inspiring, and they would insist that we minister in church, that we take a topic. I'd never done such a thing before. I'd never spoken publicly like that before. But that showed me that I could, and that I felt I had something to say. And I found in the midst of the things I had been through, which I was able to surpass, I felt I had something to say that would encourage others. So that's how I kind of got into this space. And when I found that a lot of people, were interested in talking to me about their challenges, I said to myself, why not get some qualifications so you just have some backing to do what you're doing naturally? And that's how I kind of got into this space. In fact, what I was doing, kind of dabbling in most of the years of my marriage, was in dressmaking, because I'm quite interested in fashion. I actually ran an outfit like that for many years before it was very out there to be a designer. I was kind of in that space. But at the point my children started growing up, they were going to school away from home, it kind of fizzled out. And this is the space I found myself in. So that's it. I counsel women, and people come to me, men and women come to me, because this thing called marriage, it is a thing.
It is. Don't I know it? Don't I know it? I've been married now for, still a baby, but still the years do rack up. I've been married now for 13 years. Well, thereabouts. We're not 13 years now. And yes, there are highs. And
in Nigerian parlance, it's not beans. In Nigerian parlance, it's not beans. It is not beans.
so this conversation, part of it is very selfish for me. I want to know for myself how I can be more in marriage.
Me myself, as I'm talking to myself. I am, honestly. I think everyone that is married should really be a counselor. Everybody in marriage, and even people who have separated or who are out of marriage, have something to say to others about marriage.
They do,
I do believe so.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what I'm hearing you say in effect is that this was birthed out of possibly, the challenge that you went through, and then seeing that, there was more that needed to be done. There was there was a gap. There was information that people needed to have to help them so that they would not possibly fall into the same, circumstances. So it's a pain to purpose in a way, in a way, journey as well.
It's not in a way. That absolutely is a pain to purpose story. And I actually like to say that strength, courage, and character is always birthed in adversity. Always, always birthed through adversity. Yeah, I love it. Because you come through, and if it doesn't kill you, you're supposed to pull others through.
Make it stronger. I love it. That's so true, and that's all right. Thank you. So let's get to it. Marriage. It's like, is it a desire that every single person should have to be optimal in their marriage, or is it just as marriages just flatlined and that's just the destiny of the marriage? Or are there is it a desire for everybody to aspire to have like a really, really, really hot, smoky, amazing marriage?
Everything marriage. Absolutely, it should be a desire of everybody. One of the things you said when we started speaking, you talked about the fact that your listeners are going to be thinking, wow, aren't we supposed to be talking about being more entrepreneurial, motivating us to go, the distance in our personal endeavors, businesses, and all that? And you see, that's the thing. I think that's one of the major issues that we have with regard to marriage. We're all talking about how you can be more in every area of your life and how you can do more in every area of your life. Make that business work, make those sales, improve yourself, scale. Everybody's talking about these things. It's what is just really out there right now. But you see, I always like to say that those same principles that apply to all these things apply to a marriage. And I dare say, if your marriage is not optimal, your relationship with your significant other is not optimal, it impacts those things negatively. It's difficult to be creative if when you get home, you don't have some cheerleader, you don't have anywhere to springboard from out into the world and smash those goals and scale. You don't have anywhere safe to springboard from. And you have nowhere to come back to, a safe place to come back to, when inevitably in your journey to scaling, in your journey to being the best you can be in your, in your business, your work life and all that, you sometimes inevitably you get life's lemons will hit you, and you have no safe place to retreat to. So what happens in the bedroom affects the boardroom. And anybody who wants to be the best they can be in their workplace needs to sort out their relationship with their significant other. And for those who are single, they need to be thinking strategically, just as they would with their business, about the kind of person they give the privilege of spending the rest of their lives with them. So it is very fundamental. It's not diametrically opposed to what you typically do on your podcast. It's intrinsically linked.
I love it. And I love how you talk about, when you're single, you need to be thinking strategically, because if you get it wrong, it just kind of goes pear-shaped from then on. And I heard someone say this week, that just because somebody wants to marry you doesn't mean you should marry them. And this is often not a space that we discuss or we consider. We just feel, oh my God, they proposed, hey! And everyone's just, just because we give as women, most of the time it's the men proposing to women. As women, it almost feels like we give the power completely in totality to the man to decide who he wants to marry, when it should definitely should be balanced. What would you say about that?
You've hit the nail right on the head. Because as a woman, especially in our neck of the woods, And in our culture, the Black culture generally, women tend to get the short end of the stick. So, excuse me, we have to be particularly careful about who we give the privilege of spending the rest of their life with us. So yes, as a young woman, in fact, I always say that for the singles, you have a unique opportunity to get your life partner right, because a life partner can mar you. So the same way you're looking, what kind of job do I want? What kind of car would I like to ride? Where will I live? Why do I want this? This is the time to, as you're making those goals for your work life, you're making those goals for your married life, knowing that it's going to impact your work life and your scaling life and your all that life. It's going to impact it so much. This is the time to find you. This is the time to increase you. This is the time to do more with you. You understand? Because I always say there has to be a me for there to be a successful us. There cannot be a successful us if there's not a successful me, both professionally and personally. You see, so it is very true. You can't marry just for the sake of marriage, because a bad marriage will scar you, and it will make a lot of other things very difficult. And I know in this day and age, I'm 57, a lot of the young people say, oh, it doesn't work, I'll leave. But they think leaving is that easy. Even if it's not even that easy. Things, when you leave, even if you dislike the person you've left, there's a whole lot of everything that comes into play. Perchance children have come into the mix. There's a whole lot more that comes into play. So it's best you deal with it now. And then for those of us who are married, especially as women, for men too, to be honest, but you need to, even if you've got it wrong, you need to take a step back again and try to correct what has gone wrong. Because it affects the boardroom. Let's put it that way. What happens in the bedroom affects the boardroom. So yes, absolutely.
I love that. And perhaps someone's listening now and saying, well, I wish I'd heard that when I was single. I'm married now, and I've kind of jumped into the pepper soup. Can people change? Do people actually change? Is that possible? True lasting.
You can't change another. You can't change another person. Can people change? I guess so. I guess it's difficult, but they can. But they'd have to be committed to that change. They'd have to acknowledge that something is wrong with them, so they have to change. And a lot of times, when you've entered these funny situations, the person you've entered it with might not see the necessity to change, and therefore cannot even begin to change or commit to changing. So even if you're in a marriage that is kind of awry already, honestly, you just have to take stock and make a decision. The truth is, I always tell women that it's either one, you have to sit down and articulate what you think is wrong, what you think can be done about it, and then you have to articulate it to this other person. And telling this other person, it cannot be dependent on how you think the person is going to receive it, whether the person is going to change. It can't be dependent on that. It has to be that you've assessed it, you've seen where you guys have gone wrong or what has gone wrong, and you now want to put it to that person. And that person's response, positive or negative, is still a response and can determine what further actions can be taken. Because being in a bad situation in marriage, even for a man, it's something that you don't really want to wish on anybody. It affects everything else. And it has a knock-on effect, because if things aren't working, people may seek outlets elsewhere. Not that that's right, or that it's a justification, but that's what happens sometimes. And if the person seeks outlets elsewhere, all other kinds of complications come into play. And if there are children in the marriage, or children that now come from outside the marriage, the whole dynamic just becomes a dynamic with so many moving parts. It just becomes difficult. So it's best to watch it before you go into it, knowing it affects things. Or when you're in it, you need to take stock at a point if it's not working and decide what you want to do.
Love it. Okay, cool. So what would you say are the core pillars of a successful marriage? If you had to pick I'm sure from your experience, there'll be a myriad of things that you can't say. But if we had to sum it up and say, let's shrink it down to 3, 4, or even 5 things, what are the core pillars that you think have to be present for a marriage to be deemed as good and successful?
I'm actually going to mention 2, and then two. But under those two, to a degree, there are many subsets. So, for instance, I'm a Christian. I know this is not like a church thing, but I'm a Christian, and
I am too. This
for me, I would say first of all God, and I use that term in a certain way. I hope this doesn't sound controversial. You have to believe in something, and both of you have to believe in that thing. So for me, it's God. If it's, I don't know, some other malevolent being, or that you don't believe in anything, or, whatever it is, but it would be good that both of you believe in it, because you see, that belief will determine how you see marriage. Because you see, like, I'm just giving an example here. For instance, as a Christian, I believe God instituted marriage. You have to decide what marriage means to you and what your yardstick for a marriage is. Then both of you have to believe it. Because if one person believes that marriage is something that, something, and you believe it's something else, then that's already a problem. So you need to be on the same page as to what you think marriage means. Exactly, that's one. And I could go into many subsets under that. So let's place it under, so we don't offend people who maybe don't believe in God or don't want this to be all Christianese. No. You have to believe in something, because core values are going to matter. How you see yourself, how you see the world, how you see marriage, what marriage means to you. And the second thing after that for me would be communication. And under communication, there's so much one can say, because communication is not just speaking. So if somebody's speaking to me in Mandarin now, they're speaking, but I cannot understand what they're saying. So I can't act upon it in a positive nor a negative way. I just can't act upon it. I speak a smattering of Italian. So if someone was speaking to me in Italian, I might be able to pick out a few things, but I may not be able to fully comprehend what the person is saying to me. So I still can't act on it effectively. So in marriage, communication is key. And this communication would be the ability to know what you're feeling and then be able to communicate it to the other person such that they understand and can act on it or not, as the case may be. So those are the 2 things I'll say, because something like communication, the first one, the core beliefs, what you believe in, and the second one, communication, will cover finances, it will cover sex, it will cover how you have disagreements, it will cover how you make up, it covers everything. So the ability to communicate, if I were to speak to any single person now, I'd say, learn now how to communicate. Don't be passive aggressive. Don't be aggressive. Learn and hone the ability to know what you're feeling and be able to say it out properly to another person. Communication will involve active listening, and doesn't come to human beings naturally. The ability to listen to what somebody is saying and hear the words that are behind the words, to be able to put yourself in that person's shoes, and therefore people can then communicate. So I can say, I like drinking water in a wine glass. It just makes it all nice. But you like drinking water with a calabash. And we're able to talk about it and see the merits or demerits of each. I may decide to start using a calabash. You may decide to start using a wine glass, but we can talk about it properly. So those are the foundations of it. And I can go into so many things under these 2 headings, but that is what, at the end of the day, will make a marriage successful. The ability to communicate with another person, verbal, non-verbal, body language, the manner of expression, the time you express it, how you express it. Those are the kind of things I'll say. And there's so much to say under that time won't allow us to. But that's it. In my book, that the one about, you're talking about the red negligee, if you were to give that book a more mundane title, it would be How to Tell Your Man How to Read Your Mind and How to Help Your Man Read It. or
Oh, wow.
for, that would be it. Or
I
for
need,
the
I need
men,
that book.
what exactly is happening in this woman's mind? And for the women, this is how I communicate what's happening in my mind to my man. That's what it would be.
Oh. I find that this is often the stumbling block, really, this
Mhm.
communication. So in communication, yeah, should there be an allowance? And I don't know where it will go, this question, but should there be an allowance? Is there a certain way that men prefer to communicate? Should there be an allowance for how men are in communication, and also vice versa for women, how we listen and how we, project?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you added the women, because when you said for how men, because that's one of the things I stand against. Both parties should be
Of
actively seeking
course.
to communicate with each other. And why I say this is, you see, women, we like to talk. Me and you, if we sit here now, we can talk till till daybreak, sort of thing. Men, they say don't talk as much, but men do talk when they're watching, and they do show emotion. When they're watching football matches, they're jumping up and down, they're screaming, they almost kiss each other when their team wins. So do you understand? So they can express emotion, they can. So both of us have to learn. In fact, I call the women's language one gauge. That's what I called it in my book. And I call the men's language man gauge. We both have to learn each other's languages. Like I tell men when I'm teaching premarital classes, what's wrong with you? Nothing. Nothing never means nothing. When a woman says nothing in our own language, it never means nothing. It means keep asking me till I tell you, showing me that you care enough about me to make the effort to find out. It's just like in certain languages, words expand. So it's difficult to translate things from one language to another because you can't really translate languages to a degree. Some words have a deeper meaning in some languages. And so I say, one of the things I say is that there should be premarital classes before people even meet the person to start going for premarital classes. There really should be a situation where people learn communication is one of the skills for marriage. Let me learn how to communicate. I'm going to need to speak to a woman. What do women really need? Not when you've met the person, but prior to.
So good.
Because
so good.
You understand? So yeah, because women, if I come out and I say to you, should I carry the red bag or the green bag? You cannot just not look up and tell me the green bag. You can't, because if a woman, in my language, it means you can't be bothered. So should we also learn the man's language? Yes, we should. That sometimes you might need to draw a little bit more out of him. He doesn't understand cryptic clues. If he comes and he says he's going out with the guys and you say, oh, again, he doesn't get it. In his mind, he's thinking, that guy should go or that I should not go. You understand? You understand? They don't understand cryptic clues. They just don't. You understand? No offense to the men here, but men can be a bit, slowish, I think, personally. You understand? So if both of us are seeking actively to communicate, like when two people don't understand their language, they're making signs, they're doing all kinds of things down there, they're doing all kinds of things. That's what we have to do as men and women. Learn how each of us communicate and seek to communicate in that manner. And with time, we'll both learn each other's method of communication.
And one I would like to throw in, it's so good. Thank you so much. One I would like to throw in is how men are more kind of like solution oriented. A woman wants to kind of talk dilly-dally, oh, I'm not really feeling it, and a man just swoops in and says, is it headache? Let me just give you paracetamol. But no, I just need you to just kind of talk, and before we get to the answer, I just find I find that for me personally, I'm being a bit vulnerable here. That is often where myself and my other half butt heads, because I'm like, I don't need you to give me a solution. I know where paracetamol is if I want something. I just need you to be here with me in this moment. Like, I'm feeling down, just be here. What would you say about that?
I love it. And as you're vulnerable, I'm gonna tell you, it's not only you, it happens with my husband too. You say something and the person just gives an answer or says, what do you want me to do? Or and you understand? It's very upsetting. And so really, and I'm talking to myself as well. I don't think I have it all together. I'd never like people to think that I'm some kind of whatever that's got everything together. No. So really, ideally in that situation, one should pick a time and say to the man, when I say to you, so let me just use your example, that I have a bit of a headache. I might not want paracetamol because I know where the paracetamol is. You understand? At that moment, really what I'm asking is that maybe you just hold me or touch my head or kiss my forehead or something, and it would just make me feel better, because we're expecting the person to just know, and the truth is they don't. And a lot of us women, myself included, we struggle with this because it's almost as if he doesn't know, then I'm not going to tell him, or why should I tell him? But we have to now, because since they can't understand that particular they don't get it. So we need to say, now, let's say you've said it. Some people say, but I've said it over and over and over again, and he still doesn't do it. Now, these are the things where it becomes difficult, because all relationships are different. There's no two relationships on earth that are the same, because of the people are unique. The combinations they make are unique. However, if a person persistently refuses to countenance something you've told them over and over again, and the person is not sick or has issues or whatever, then there's a decision that needs to be made.
Love it. Love it. And when we're talking about this, the thought that just came to my head is, the flip side of this. You gave two key points. You said God and communication for you is the basis for a successful marriage, right? If we look at it and we turn this on its head, perhaps there are people that are listening to this podcast and they're thinking, yes, this is all well and good, right? But on this God part, or if let's not call it, let's say it's not God, just on the moral code, and you guys are reading from the same script, the same moral code, we are not aligned. And I think you touched on it very briefly earlier, or you kind of, but I don't know how to ask this question. Should people, at what point do you kind of say, what, this is
not working.
This isn't what I want. Yes. Or is it a life sentence?
You see, it's an impossible question to answer. And the reason why it's very difficult to answer is because, as I said, each human being on earth is unique. We all have different fingerprints. We're very unique in many ways. I just use the fingerprint as an example. So the combinations we make when we come together are unique. No other marriage on earth is the same. And if somebody were to marry a different person, divorce and marry a different person, the combination they're going to make is going to be unique. So it's difficult for a one size to fit all. How I usually respond to this question is, number one, I believe, and this is just me personally, that marriage, because of the ramifications of marriage, the wide reaching, like a stone thrown into a pond, the ripples, you don't know where it's going to go and what it's going to disturb in the process. So number one, marriage should not be entered into frivolously, and it should not be left precipitately. And that's the only way to really answer that question, that it must be entered into solemnly and with much thought. And if there's a need to leave, it has to be left in the same way, not precipitately, solemnly and with much thought. So it's difficult to say because situations are going to differ. Things like abuse or even in some cases serial infidelity, there may be need for a separation, which may eventually end up in a divorce, which is not advocated and according to my faith is not desirable. But the truth is sometimes it's not going to work, not because it can't, but because the individuals concerned, all of us have our weaknesses, and we may not be able to commit to what it takes to mend it. It can be mended, but we might not be able to commit to it. So I was on something earlier today where I was asked a very similar question. So it's a difficult question to answer because every situation will be different. But are there instances where, and I may get flack from this from the church people, church established, whatever. But the truth is sometimes sadly, just because of the way the world is, it just might not happen. But if two people are, okay, let me add this to mitigate what I've said. If two people are committed to making it work and doing the work to make it work, it can work. Let's put it that way. No matter what happens,
committed to making it work, and they're putting in the work to make it work.
Yes, exactly.
It can turn around and be successful.
Absolutely. But what usually sometimes happens is that when, as a counselor, you see all the time, one person is really ready to put in the work and sort of do it, but the other person isn't, or sometimes the other person, so everybody's at different levels at different times. But you need two people to, as much as possible, be on that same level of commitment to make it work and then do the work that is necessary. If that happens, it can turn around, it can. But a lot of times, or sometimes, you don't really see that happen.
Sadly. Okay, that's good. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for that. I want to talk about boundaries in marriage. It's often a word that it almost feels like a dynamite when people hear it. Boundaries, what does that mean? We were separate, no, we are together. God has put us together forever, blah, blah, blah. We cannot be separate. What would you say is the role of, why are boundaries important to have in marriage? Certainly from your perspective, because obviously you counsel a lot of people, and what sort of relationships have you seen from your experience that fall into issues when boundaries are not respected or are enforced properly?
Well, again, it depends on what boundaries, because what really is a boundary is something that marks a spot or a territory that you shouldn't cross into, kind of, isn't it? That's what it is. Yes, and so again, it's such a blanket question, because what do we mean by boundaries in marriage? Are boundaries necessary in everything? Yes, there should be boundaries. That's what keeps society from going into chaos and disorder and confusion. You understand? So I guess in that respect, there should be boundaries. And a lot of those, because it depends in what areas, what is meant by these boundaries in a marriage. What, don't speak to me that way, or I don't want you to do this, or when we quarrel, I guess there should be boundaries. People could have certain rules when we don't sleep angry, or we have a happy zone in our house where once you get in there, or when we're quarreling, you call a timeout. If we're talking about things like that,
it's not necessarily about how it's more personal agency, understanding and owning your emotions, responding and empowering yourself even in a union. That's how I generally see boundaries. It's letting the good in, but not the bad, if you see what I mean. It's just being whole, but also being together, but as a whole person.
I think there's a need for there to be a wholeness in each person in order to bring the fullness of what they are into the union. You understand? So, because it would be best if we, for instance, gave an example, because I wouldn't want to just put a blanket thing. Boundaries are necessary for everyone. But what kind of boundaries? Should I be able to work and reach the height of my career despite being in a marriage? Absolutely. And ideally, this is something we pre-discussed before entering the marriage. But then even in marriage, people grow, people evolve, people to a degree change. So these discussions should be constant and ongoing. You would want to believe that your partner would want you to be the best you can be. And that's what it should be, that both of you desire the best for each other, and nobody truncates the best for each other of each person. That said, you're in a union that requires a oneness, and there's a lot. So the premise would be that every person is seeking the best good of the other. Because you see, if everybody's seeking the best good of the other, then that is a natural thing. If we're looking at, say, because for instance, a lot of women, maybe the husband says, you can't take up this job because of A, B, C, D. But it's a discussion. It's difficult to give a blanket answer. Let me put it that way. But let me say boundaries. People are individuals in their own right, even though they're in a marriage. And people have to recognize that, I guess. I'd kind of answer.
Yes. No, no, no. I think that sums it up right. It's understanding our individualism, even as a couple, and respecting it. Because what boundaries breed, is mutual respect. Understanding that you are you, I am me. You own your feelings, your how you respond to certain things, and I'm able to respect that, and I'm able to see what you want, and I'm able to love you the way you need to be loved. That's essentially what boundaries would bring. I want to ask a question on counseling and therapy and stuff like that. Is this something that health, as part of a healthy relationship, we should all seek? Or is it when we fall into wahala, then then we start to seek a counselor? What would be your take on it, obviously as a counselor yourself? When is the best? Is there a best time? Again, this might be a difficult one to answer. Is this something that we should be doing routinely, or is it something that we leave until there's an issue?
I'll put it this way: premarital counseling and pre-premarital counselors, I like to say, I think is an absolute must. I think that's an absolute must. Now, within marriage, if you've had that premarital counseling within marriage, one of my mantra, not even one of my mantra, is that marriage takes work to make it work. So let's get to work. So for a couple who is operating optimally, there would be a need. I guess you could go to a counselor but I'd say there would be a need for a lot of empowerment programs, places where you go to learn, you're reading books together, because people tend to think that when their marriage is working, that they don't need to do much. But the truth is, the world, it's not even a Christianese thing. The truth is, the world is decaying. If you tidy up your room today, it never gets tidier. It just progressively gets untidy until you put the input to make it tidy again. It's just the way it works. And so with a marriage, even if your marriage is optimal, it's never going to stay there. It's never going to go higher if you don't put some effort into doing that. It can only go lower. So for couples who have it all, get it going on and all that, I would suggest they read books, do things that tell them what to do, or if they know what to do things together. Or I would suggest they therapize, my daughter likes to call it, themselves. So for instance, you could have a situation where every week or every month or something, you get together, what has worked for us this month, what hasn't, what kind of issues, because all couples, even the ones in a good marriage, are going to have disagreements. When we had this disagreement, what could have been done better? In a good marriage, that would be a form of therapy. People are talking and all that. I guess you could go to someone like me for things you could do to spice up your marriage, things you could do to keep it working, but you could do it yourselves. This is what we do every week. This is what we do. And people like me could give you tips on how to do that. Or you could decide by yourself. I sit down every week or every 2 weeks and we just talk about us. So that is a form of it, because there has to be an input to make it better. But once you find that you've reached the space where you find that you're not able to sort out things yourself, I suggest you see the counselor quickly. Because what happens is people allow, by the time people come, there's so much water under the bridge. Just to even unravel what is even happening under the surface can take at least 6 sessions or something, to really even get to the gist of what is happening, and then it's difficult. So that's kind of how I answer that.
Oh, so good, so good. And how do we get our paradigms to change, particularly in marriage? Around. And this is something that we often do without even knowing that we're doing it. Obviously, I'm speaking from myself again, another vulnerable moment. But often I find there's a lot of points scoring, There's the undertone of everything that we do. We're just, either vilifying the other person, or we're trying to validate something within ourselves. How do we change our paradigm to really, really see this collective view in marriage, that we really, truly are a team? When they said two have become one, we really are one. What is that thing that often skews it such that we don't really see that oneness all the time?
You see, once people have begun to no longer talk about what they're talking about, but be talking about something, but they're really talking about something else, you have to see somebody. You have to. Because at that point, people are no longer hearing each other. And a vulnerable moment for me, it happened to me. So anything you're saying, oh, don't put the cup on the table, put it in the sink. It's no longer just don't put the cup on the table, put it in the sink or put it in the dishwasher. There's something else underlying right behind that. There are other things that have happened that you're just saying that, but something else is being said. And once people reach there, again, I'll repeat, they're not hearing each other. They're no longer communicating. One person is speaking Mandarin and the other person is speaking Igbo. Or one person is understanding a smattering of Italian and the other person is not. So it needs a situation where that can be seen. And people will say, but what if the other person doesn't want to go? Because that's what people say, because we confront these things all the time. Then one person should go. Because you see, even a drop of water in the dryness of a marriage can revive it, can begin some kind of rejuvenation. So maybe when I say put the cup in the dishwasher, not in the sink, if you were to come to me and I'd say, okay, give me other instances of what's happening, what's really happening right now. What are the things you really like about this person? What are the things that are making you no longer speak to this person? Because you weren't speaking like that when you got married, else you probably wouldn't have. So what are the things that this person does that just rub you off the wrong way? What has happened in the marriage that has done this? At what point did it start? Because it's very unlikely it started from when you guys were dating and going to the movies and kissing every minute and all that. One has to take it back. So if one person can get their act together, because you see, it does take two to tango, but sometimes one person may have to cut the other some slack. And this is where the problem arises a lot of times, because, you know, one person may not want to, or you think to yourself, how much slack do I cut? But, you know, sometimes one is, you know, in a tango, sometimes one person is a stronger dancer and they can lead the other person and keep it going and the other person picks up. So one person can actually go. And sometimes if that person is able to look at themselves, look inward, look at what they're really saying when they say put the cup in the dishwasher and begin to say things a little different, it can just affect the behavior of the other person positively. It might not always work, but it does. Sometimes it does. The person notices a change, wonders what is happening, and might be inclined to then go to see the person is seeing, or may even slightly adjust their behavior themselves, which then helps the other person, you know. And the thing is, you know, it's not an easy thing sometimes to do, but yeah, that's what I'd say. So for people who say the other person won't come, that might be the way to go first. Because when people are no longer hearing themselves, you need a third party to help you. It's unfortunate, but that's what it is. Because whatever you're saying to the person, you're both saying things that are going in one ear, going out the other, and aggravating the situation.
And it does it get easy at some point? You've been married now for 20 years. Does it get to one point where it's like 29 years? Does it get to one point where it's like, you know what, we communicate, it's bliss, and you know, there's not is this something that will keep back me?
You know, I'm 29 years in it, and I'll just say this, I guess the jury is still out. But my personal belief, though I've not experienced it myself, is that if people can persevere, not through somebody waking up in the night and about to stab you or something, but if people can persevere, I think it might probably pan out in the end. That's what I think. But then I'm not there yet, so I can't say. But that's kind of what I sort of think in a way, you know, that might be what eventually happens. You know,
and what are we fighting for, you know, in this whole thing with marriage? Like, and I use the word fight intentionally because that's what we're doing. We're putting in the work. And what is that picture? What is that thing that it gives when it works? You know, you made a statement earlier, when a marriage is working. What is that? Paint us a picture or tapestry of when a marriage does work. What is that benefit?
Then you know that somebody has your back through thick and thin. I don't know whether any of the people watching has watched this House of Cards. I didn't finish the series. And it was an evil dynamic between a husband and wife. It was. But these people were, I never watched the rest of the series. I don't know what happened to them in the end.
But I know that
they were truly one. They were truly one. In fact, I remember when the wife had an affair and the guy she had an affair with was trying, I'm not saying anyone should have an affair, that she had the affair with was trying to come in between them. And the guy, Kevin Spacey, said to him, don't even think that you can understand or the dynamic between us or something like that, come between us. The way he said it. So what happens when you have that kind of understanding, where you see a person with all their flaws, warts and all, and yet you just take that person as they are? It's a bond that can be, really tight, where you know that through thick and thin, somebody has your back. They have their flaws. They may even do things, but somehow you make excuses for both their weaknesses and you play on their strengths. Then there's a powerful union, which was what it was always supposed to be. It was the originator, as far as I believe, was expecting that it would be a situation like this, where two people come together and sort of fill the gaps of the other. So it's not even a situation of the man is up there, the woman is down there. No, that was not. And that's why you see that first thing I said, what do the people think that marriage is? It's critical. It was supposed to be a situation where two people come together and they're able to cover weaknesses and pool strengths so that they can then stand. That's really what it's supposed to be. So that's the kind of thing you can get if you can achieve that kind of friendship and sort of oneness. It's a beautiful thing if it can be achieved. So you have a companion, you have a friend, you have a sparring partner, you have someone to make love to, you have somebody who you can do all kinds of things in front of, and it's just what it is.
I love it. And just as we close, I love how you just said, you have someone to make love to. What is that role of, having a spicy, bedroom, love life?
Swinging from the chandelier kind of
Exactly, swinging from the chandelier. What is that role? What is the role of that in just solidifying and cementing the union between man and woman? And why is it that, a lot of times we don't, prioritize it in probably in the average marriage, it's not prioritized. Nobody's thinking, oh my God, how can I make, there are few people that are doing it, but not as many as should be.
You see, for sure, even just biologically, when people make love, there's a bonds, certain hormones, just even scientifically come out that cause closeness and all that. But you see, the problem that we have in marriage is we're not all these other areas, you see, especially even for the women. The men, I'm not going to speak for the men really, but for a woman, for instance, the way she reacts in the bedroom is dependent on what happened the night before on the morning of the day. It starts the morning after the night before. So if you can get to that friendship level in your marriage, then sex comes easy, especially for the women. A lot of women say that men say their wives don't like sex, but then a lot of men don't approach sex the right way. You understand? And so the woman clams up and you're there saying she doesn't like sex. Most women like sex. Honestly, I believe they do, but they're just approached in the wrong way. So again, there's an intentionality about it. You can't have not interacted in any level, both for the men and the women, and you expect your sex life to be hot and spicy. Because how does sex life become hot and spicy? It's because you know where to touch me, how to touch me, how long to touch me there, how intense to be about it. And how do you know this? I'm going to have to be. Some people may know it intuitively, but people will have different. I might like being touched on the nose, and Paula might like being touched on the chin. And how are we going to deter, especially these days when people have done all sorts of things before marriage? You're learning from Paula. Meanwhile, you're going to be married to Paulette. Sure. You understand? So whatever Paula likes, however experienced you are with Paula, is irrelevant to Paulette because she's a different human being with different needs and different pressure points. So even in that issue of sex, to hot spicy sex, and to learn another person's body in a way that can make you pleasure them properly, There's still going to have to be communication. And I'm going to have to feel free, especially for the women, to communicate with you in that way. If we're not talking about anything, as I can't speak to you about anything, I ask you about the blue and the green bag, and you're not even looking at me, and you're telling me the blue one, but you then want me to be swinging around the chandelier, then I'm not free enough. I'm not free enough to say, no, don't touch my nose, touch somewhere else, because I'm feeling kind of somehow, because I'm just not that free. I'm telling you, when people get their relationship right, it doesn't mean that there's no chemistry or that people should marry someone who makes their skin crawl. There has to be something. But what I'm saying is, that is going to require communication. So hot, spicy sex requires that you tell me what you want, how you want it, and how long you want it for. It's still going to come down to this issue of syncing on every other level. Initially, hormones may run wild and we have hot, passionate sex every second. But when life sets in and we have to now talk about other things, and I find that, and both the man and the woman find that they cannot really talk on that level, after a while, no matter how that initial rush is, it's going to dwindle. And people are no longer going to be able to do it that way, because sex requires a level of abandonment and surrender that requires you to be a take. I don't know if I've answered that.
You have, ma'am. You have. I'm tempted to ask this question, but when you hear people saying, you know what, they're having, is there an ideal of the frequency of sex in marriage, or does it differ, from marriage to marriage on a wide scale? If that makes sense. Is there an ideal? Is there something that we should aspire to?
I'm sure it would differ from marriage to marriage, because again, like at the risk of sounding like a broken record, people are unique. But I think an active couple that is young should be quite active. I think it should, and I don't even know. I guess quite active is relative. Does once a month cut it? I don't think so. Especially if you're young and both people, even older, let me not relate it, are physically able. They should be doing it. They should. They should really be quite. They should be quite active. A young couple, even I repeat it. I like to say my age a lot. At my age, I still want to really, get into it. I do.
Love it. Okay, this has been such an amazing conversation. Gosh, my people, I'm sure, have been taking notes. You have been schooled, people. I love this, and I love this in the whole context of being created for more, which we talked about at the start. This is such a pivotal part. It's such an important aspect of who we are, that if we are not more at home, then we can't be more outside. So that is why we're having this conversation. Thank you so much. In your final words to us, just speak to one woman. I always like, let's just speak to one woman. Speak to one woman who has listened to every single thing that you've said, who's thinking, oh my goodness, I have heard a lot, but I feel slightly overwhelmed. I don't know where to start in my marriage. Just speak to her and just give us some counsel as to what to do with everything that she's heard.
My darling, sit down and write out what you want from your marriage. What would really make you feel loved and cherished and nourished and honored? What would give you, in your marriage or your relationship with your significant other, what would give you that confidence to just really go for it and know that you feel good about yourself? What would it be? Write it down. Write it down. And then look at whether it's something you can communicate to your significant other. If you cannot communicate this to your significant other, in fact, in like telling the person, speaking to the person, write it and send it. We stop there because many people think too much has happened, or they think he's not going to react well to it. Forget about how the person will react. Write down what you would see as your ideal marriage and the benefits you feel that would make to him, to you, and to your children if you have any, and send it. You can even take time to write it. His reaction is not important. What is important is that you've spoken your truth. He might react negatively, but what if he doesn't? What if he reacts positively? And if he reacts negatively, it's still information that you need to have to determine where you want to go from there. You might decide you're just going to stay in it, as a lot of us of, this culture do. But at least you know what you want. A lot of women say, my husband doesn't really love me or show me love. And when you ask them, how do you want to be loved? They don't even know. I'd say start from there. And of course, you can come and have a conversation with me.
Of course. I love it. I feel like it's a bit one-sided though. The men in call, we've just given advice to the man. When we have men and women listening to this podcast, what would be your advice to a man?
I would say to the men, a lot of men truly believe, no matter of what faith they are, that they are the head of the home. That a lot of men believe that, not even from a religious point of view, they just truly believe they're the head of the home. And if you truly believe that, then I'd like you to study what leadership means. A lot of people are doing all these courses, John Maxwell, this, that. What does a leader do? And I want you to put that into your home with regard to your wife. A lot of women want to, I don't want to use this word, so the women who I'm, whatever here, don't come at me. A lot of women would like to feel that they have a man, properly so called. But they have no idea who you are, what you stand for, where we're going as a family, what we're doing. So I'd say every man should study, because most men, if you ask them, they will agree that they're the head of the home. What does leadership mean? And put it in your marriage. Put it into play with your woman.
Love it. Love it. This has been such an amazing conversation. It's been a masterclass on marriage. Guys, you need to listen to it again and again, because there's just so many gems in there. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We appreciate you, and we can't wait to have you back on the podcast. Thank you.
I can't wait to come back.